Welcome back. This is part 3 of a series of videos that I have about building a cosplay weapon, particularly a pistol. And I mentioned in the other videos that this is, a non-functioning weapon. Of course, it's made out of EVA foam. If you look in the description below, there'll be a link to the other videos where we designed this and cut it. And in this particular video, we're going to do the sealing job with Mod Podge, and we're going to also paint this. The first step of this today that we're going to do is obviously stir the paint, which I did with a screwdriver. And I'm just going to put the lid back on that. I keep saying paint. It smells like paint. It looks like paint. It's glue. But anyway, I have some toothpicks here on my nicely crafted model here. I'm actually going to put a couple holes into this because I want this to be able to be painted on all sides, and then I want to be able to lay it down and let it dry. And this is the easiest way to do that, especially since I'm in here in my lab and not outside in the shed. But anyway, I'm digressing. I'm going to figure out how to get these in here in just such a way where they're not quite visible. It doesn't really matter later on. I can always fill them with hot glue. And they don't have to go in too far. Like maybe I'll just stick one over here and something like this as a stand, just to hold it like that. And we'll do the same thing in the back over here in one of the seams. That's the best way to do it. That works. So you can see now we got a nice little stand. And I can go ahead and start Mod Podging it. Now, Mod Podge, this isn't my actual first time doing this, but my brother uses this all the time, as has been mentioned in the other videos. We're just going to go right over this where I have things written like this here. It's not going to really matter because we're going to paint this when it's done, like I said. But we're just going to take a foam brush here and really get into these fine areas with the corner and just paint this all over and seal it up. And that's the gist of it. And I don't have any editing software right now to do montage videos of me doing this, so I'm not going to really video that footage because it's kind of boring in my opinion. So I'm just going to dip this in here, paint it on, that's it, and we'll be back when that's done. Alright, we're back. That was pretty easy. I made a little tripod setup out of the toothpicks that seemed to work. And yeah, it's all sealed up. I just gotta wait for this to dry. The heavy white spots there, I've been kind of going back and just hitting it with the sponge, like in here for example, and just taking off the heavy part of it. Just kind of keeping it smoothed out, just to make this look as best as possible so there's no ugly under the paint. And just making sure, certain spots like the ends soak this up pretty good. So you might have to go back over and just dab a little bit of paint in there. I keep calling it paint. It's very much like paint, I guess you could say. Except it does that thing when you get it on your fingers, like rubber cement kind of does. You get that extra layer of skin. By the way, if you like that effect, get some Mod Podge and just dip your fingers in it and let it dry. You can peel it off. I know people who actually do like that. But anyway, to each their own. Yeah, so that's just what this is all about right now. Just making sure the pieces that soak this up just have a nice outside coating on it like that. This will make it paint a lot nicer. And I mentioned some Plasti-Dip. I might actually spray this whole thing in Plasti-Dip if I have enough of it. That would give it a kind of cool texture too. But with that, that's all I really have to show for now. I'm just going to go ahead and cut the film, let this dry, and we'll come back probably tomorrow when I have this painted. See you then. Well, it's been a couple days since I initially sealed this, and you can see it looks pretty nice. Actually has a nice finish to it now, but it's going to look better once it's painted. One thing to note, at the bottom over here, you can see there's just a little slight blemish. That's what caused there was the 2 sticks that came out the bottom when I had it kind of suspended in the air, and when I pulled those out, it took some of the sealant with it, so I just had to dab some more in there and just wait another few hours for that to dry. Also, to note at the top up here, there was another one. When I went to pull it out, it got stuck, so I just broke it off and pushed it back down a little bit. So there is still a piece of wood in there, but it doesn't really matter. And actually, in reality, you could actually attach them that way if you wanted. You could just push the pieces right through and use them like pins, but it wasn't necessary. In fact, down here I could have just broke those off right at the end. That would have worked. But now I'm at the painting stage. The tip is just sitting in here superficial. I could just pop that out. It's a little tighter now that it's sealed. One of the things I did was the outside edge here sticks out a little further than the bottom edge here. So when you push this in, you see that lip from the bottom, but you don't see it from the top. So I thought that was kind of a cool effect. It's going to look nice when it's done. I still kind of like the look of this as it is now, even though I wrote which side these belong on. Other than that, it looks pretty cool, but it'll look nice once it's done. Now the thing is what color do I paint it? I was initially going to go with black, which I have. However, I have a ton of other different colors, and one of them is the metallic finish, and I don't know how that would take to this. So it'd be interesting to experiment, but ultimately I'll probably just go with black after all. And it is going to get a Plasti-Dip coating at some point. I just wanted to get a base coat of black down first, just to cover in case the Plasti-Dip rubs off. And let me go pick out some colors and see what we have. I managed to find 4 different cans of paint that I thought were interesting. We have after all, the Plasti-Dip regular spray. I also have the can of Plasti-Dip that you can apply with the brush if you thin it out a little bit. That's always an option if I just want to paint that on here. There's the hammered, which has exactly what this look looks like. I've done a couple different pieces with this. It comes out really nice, but it was metal. I don't know how that's going to take to the foam. I mean, it says it works with plastic, but foam and plastic are different. The other one's this Rust-Oleum 2X. This is Ultra Cover Paint Plus Primer. This has a glossy effect, whereas this one over here is a flat black, and this is a professional 15-minute fast dry, so I might be able to put more coats on quicker on this one. The more coats I paint, obviously, the better it's going to look. The other thing that's a problem with this is how to actually mount this to get it to dry without sticking to something. We can use the toothpick routine like we did last time, but the problem with the toothpicks is it does leave the holes, and I don't want them visible when we're done, unless of course I put one inside here, and I'm not sure I'd put the other one, but I had to figure that out. I do have my backdrop in the background, which is my ever so faithful spray booth that I made a couple of years ago. This particular spray booth's nice because I have little notches cut in it where I can put a string across and hang things. I can orient it any way I want, which is nice. I can fold up the flaps to put it away, which comes pretty compact. But all I did to make this was just put hot glue in here. And these are just the natural folds of a box. I have another one where these pieces are on the outside edge. And that's obviously a wider box where you could do a lot more painting in it. But figuring out how to get this gun in here where I could spray it just right. I mean, I could always lay it up like this and then do 2 sides of it, but I want to do it all at once. And that's my favorite way to paint, because that way the coats come out even more, more evenly. One thing to note, I just sponged the Mod Podge on the inside here, and it pulled up. I mean, that's going to not show when it's painted, but I would have preferred if I had a smaller brush, I wouldn't have had that in there. As it dried, I take the brush and I smooth it out all those pieces so I didn't have to worry about it. Oh, and the other thing we have to do is make the piece of plastic up here. I'll have to go back in the house and get the piece of pipe that I cut out, and we'll have to cut it to fit and figure out how to get that in here. So I'm going to go ahead and, once again, grab some more supplies. I'll be right back. I gathered up the prerequisite supplies, namely the little piece of pipe, a pair of pipe cutters. By the way, these are a pretty good pair of pipe cutters. They cut through pipe like butter. It's got a really nice sharp blade. They're Cobalt. I got them from Lowe's, but I'm sure there's a lot of other brands that have this particular style of blade, and it's just a really nice solid tool, and definitely cuts nice pipes, especially when you have these ones that you use the squeeze fittings where they just pop in. Anyway, I also have a hot glue gun warming up, and I have a Dremel tool. And the idea is what we're going to do is cut this pipe to fit this gap here. I already marked it out inside with a line here. And we're going to cut that with this piece and make sure it fits nice and snug. And then I'm going to measure it and cut so the rounded edge just sits inside here. And we're going to get it, stuffed in there and glued in. And I'm just going to go ahead and cut this and see if we can get it to fit. Just like that. Believe it or not, that first cut was actually quite hard to do with the Dremel. I had a difficult time. I'm not sure if it was because the blade I was using wasn't the right blade or not. I mean, it was one of these reinforced blades. I guess it just didn't have the right grit on it. But I ended up just taking this and putting it on the edge and just cutting right through it. It worked like a hot knife through butter, literally. So now you gotta figure out where the other side's gonna come out. And I think I just figured it out pretty easily, but I'm gonna go ahead and mark that and get this again fit. And surprisingly, that fit right away, really simply. You see the end of it when I first cut it didn't come out so straight, whereas the bottom is straight, but that's perfect because the way this is curved in here, that fit perfectly. And it's not quite rounded because you can see there's more left of the bottom piece than there is the top. But again, I just used this and sliced right through it. That was definitely the easiest way to do it. And the Dremel tool took entirely too long and ended up burning it, and it stunk in here and it was no good. But yeah, if I orient this just right and put it like that, you see it adds that rounded out chamber effect, which is pretty cool. And that's going to do it for all the pieces in here. So I'm going to have to just go ahead and glue this in. I'm just going to put, now that I know where it falls, I'm just going to put a bead of hot glue along the top in here and one in there and just kind of hinge this in. I might even start it on the bottom and just hinge this right into place and just fill it in wherever I need to. And then obviously when I go to paint, that's going to get first. I'm just going to walk outside here for a second and grab the red tip, or the orange tip I should say, I'm sorry, and stick that in the end just so we can see kind of how that looks as it is. I think it looks pretty freaking cool. And not just because I made it, just because it came out better than I thought it would. I don't know, what do you guys think? Pretty cool or amateur? I'm sure it has an amateur look to it, but at first glance, I mean, I wouldn't want to take this out where you shouldn't see a gun, at a convention where it's part of a costume. Might not be a big deal, especially if you know it's made of foam. But I wouldn't take this out in the public and go sticking it around, because from far away it probably does look more realistic than it does here up front in camera. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and figure out a way to get this mounted in that box outside so we can spray it at all angles the best way possible. Actually, now that I think about it, we could actually just stick a dowel in the end here and just hold it like that. That's probably the best way to do it. Let me arrange something. I did find a variety of different dowels. One of them is actually this steel rod, which was the thickest one. That's going to fit the best in there. So I can actually use that. I'm thinking maybe just put a little bit of painter's tape on the end of that just to get it to fit snug so it doesn't fall off. Because if I hold it up, it's on there now, but if you wiggle it too much, it will fall off. And then that way, it's a heavy end here that I can attach better. So we'll see how that works out. I still got to glue it in, but that's easy to do. There's a couple other ones, one's a little longer than the other. I'm not worried about spray. I will have gloves on because you do get some spray, overspray with spray paint. Well, that should work nicely. I just put a couple twists in the tape as I applied just to give it a little bit of thickness to kind of hold it snugly on there. And I'm pretty confident with that. I should be able to spray this all around at all angles, and then I can take this and clamp it to the workbench and kind of hold it out in the air to dry between coats. Or actually, the weight of it, I could just kind of cantilever it off like that. I feel pretty safe like that, not falling off. I can even put the tape at the end there if I want to give it extra weight, but I'll just let it dry like that. I am going to still go out and just kind of hold that over my spray booth just to catch any of the remaining paint, keep it from going all over the environment and area. It's actually a really calm day today. There's no sun out. It's kind of overcast. I will get a sky shot here in just a moment. And it's a good environment for painting. It's not raining. It was earlier this morning, but the air is kind of I don't know what the humidity level is, but it's not too high. So it should be good, and it's pretty dry in here for relative shed terms. I'm going to go ahead and put my gloves on. What colors did I pick? Well, I decided to go against the gloss finish because I don't think that would look so good. The flat black would look the best. Obviously the Plasti-Dip is going to be applied to certain parts of it, and the hammer effect, I don't know how that will work on the foam that well without doing some tests, which I should do. And so that leaves me with the, like I said, the flat black and the Plasti-Dip. So we're going to use those two to finish it off, and I'm going to go ahead and get everything set up out there so we can do that. I decided to switch out boots. I like this one a little better. Got my gloves, got my paint. Paint, you want to make sure you give a good shake. You want to get that ball rattling all over the place. The more you get it going, the better. And you want to go in between sprays when you do this too. You want to get that paint going good. Also, it's covered up now, but when you open up a new can of paint or new can of anything that sprays, there's usually a dot around here. And there's a lot of story about taking the nozzle and aiming it towards that dot. This one happens to be under here where all this paint is, but it has to do with the straw that's in here that soaks up all the stuff. I don't know how true it is, but it does seem like I get everything out of the can when I do aim it that way from my own personal experience. It could be just placebo effect or whatnot, I'm not sure, but it doesn't hurt to just turn it. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and just give this a few quick coats. I'm just going to read the can real quick. It says dry and recoat times. It dries to touch within 15 minutes, which is great. You can to handle in 1 to 2 hours, and fully dry in 24 hours, which is what we're going to give it, of course. And apply a second coat within an hour or 48 hours. So a lot of them, I know you can just go ahead and give it a couple light coats. And that's usually how I like to do it. But you know, everything is different with all these different paints. But I'm going to go ahead with my usual technique and give it a couple light, just quick burst coats. You know, just quick little things. And also, when I paint, I like to go parallel. You know, you're not like in one spot going back and forth, because that's changing the spray pattern. It's going to be heavier here and light that way and light that way. Whereas if you go parallel and you keep yourself in the same distance to the object, you get a lot better of a coat that way. Before I do any painting on this, I just want to make sure there's no loose pieces or the actual, you know, glue has strings like I just pulled off there. Everything looks really good on this right now. And also just make sure that still comes out, which is good. And I'm going to go ahead and paint this up. That's right after I just got done spraying it. Now obviously it has a gloss color right now. It should flatten out once it dries. But I was able to get this at all angles really well. I can just go ahead and spray the way I was, get into these angles here. When I got into the handle, I just gave it some puffs that made it nice. So far so good. I'm liking the way it's coming out. It actually doesn't look bad just like that, but when I do the Plasti-Dip, that's definitely a very muted look, and I don't know if I'm going to mask off around here or how I'm going to do that part yet. It's probably easy just to mask that. I could just actually put a piece of paper over that, believe it or not, and just maybe trace it out with an X-Acto knife or something. But I'm going to go ahead and maybe just let this flash off, get to that dry to that touch in 15 minutes, and maybe I'll do a second coat on top of it then. One of the good things about having this little fume hood that I built in here is I can put pieces that I paint that are small enough like this in front of it and let it stay in this shed to dry. But what it also does is it pulls any of the fumes that come off this out that little fan and just vents it outside. I mean, there's no filter on or anything, but it just keeps the smell out of here, and when I'm working on other projects I don't have to worry about, you know, the smell of that paint. It works pretty well. In fact, I actually put larger pieces in here and just left that on overnight, and it's you know, you come in the next day and yeah, there is a little bit of smell, but it's not as bad as it would be if you didn't have that on, and I can definitely contest to that. And that's just powered by my 12-volt computer power supply in here that I've, you know, of course, done many videos on how to mod. So it's definitely a very handy tool to have on hand. Also, I have up here a 12-volt and a 5-volt tap, so if I want to actually put this on low, I can flip it over that way. And I also have it set up with a two-way switch. One way it's set for on, the middle's off, and then the other direction you can actually set it for push button. So if you just wanted to put a quick vent, you just hit this red button right here and hold it in, and it will turn on until you let it go, obviously. And that way, like I said, you could just use it. So if it's in the winter time, for example, and I'm in here soldering, I can actually hold that in for a second while I after I get done doing whatever I'm doing while it's filled up with the smoke in here. And I can just hit that, let it go out, and then when I shut it off, it stops. So that way the heat doesn't get sucked out the whole time too. I mean, not that this thing's completely sealed up, but it's definitely a help. But anyway, I'm just going to switch this back on so it doesn't stench up in here and just let this dry the rest of the time. Here's what our gun looks like now. This is after 4 coats of paint, which I think is a pretty good amount now. It does still have that glossy effect, but that's alright. You know what? I kind of like it. But it's going to get covered over with the Plasti-Dip, which should surely give it a duller shine. So I'm going to go ahead and start doing that. It is dry to the touch. That's all I really need. It's just another paint. This one here, let's see, I can find it quickly enough. It says 30 minutes minimum between coats, so we can definitely do that. I have plenty of time before this video intends to get uploaded to get quite a few coats on this thing. Specifically in the hand grip sections, that's where we want to do it, but the whole thing ideally is going to get coated. Ironically, as I'm working on this today, my brother happens to call me and ask me a question about the thicknesses of the foam and said, hey, do you think 3 pieces of foam is too thick or is 2 enough? And I said, you know, it's too funny because I was just saying that. That's what my initial problem was. And then after sanding it down, I found that 3 was perfect, and I assured him that it was definitely the good way to go. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and take this outside and spray it with the Plasti-Dip, just as before we did with the black paint, obviously. And it should look good when it's done. Here's the finished result of the paint job and the Plasti-Dip job. There's about 4 coats of black paint underneath this Plasti-Dip, and there's about 3 coats of Plasti-Dip. And all in all, it came out really good. It's got a nice texture to it. It feels nice in the hand. Fits nice in the hand. There's only one thing left to do, and that's to put the tip in the end of it. I got the hot glue gun heating up. I'm just going to put a bead of hot glue around here and just shove this right in here. There is a slight blemish. It's this little part right here. I'm going to try to get that to line up in the corner here, somewhere where you're not going to see it around this outside edge. And that's all I really have left to do with it. I did, though, find this little fastener. This is meant to be stuck into a hole, like 2 pieces, like let's say a couple pieces of sheet metal, or you know, something along those lines, or some kind of a panel. And you wanted to connect those 2 pieces. You would drill a hole out and pop this through, and then once it's through, there's a little button. You can see this little button here. You'd push that in, and the bottom here flares out and connects, and then if you need to take it out, you would just pop this forward and pop the whole connector out. And I found one of them lying around, and I said, hey, you know, that'd be a pretty good idea to make a little hole on the other side and stick this in there so it looks like the safety button. So I think I'm going to do that too. So I'll glue that in, pop this in, just have to make a little hole there, and we'll see how this looks once it's done. It is, as they say, done. I'm not putting any more effort into this piece. It is completely done. The tip has been glued on. I took standard Plasti-Dip, not the spray, and in a couple spots like in here, I just laid it down in the crack just to attempt to fill it more. And then I sprayed it again, so it had to get another couple coats. Also, you notice on the sight, I put a little white dot. Also on the back sight, there's 2 white dots. Just slightly annoyingly a little larger than the front dot. The way I did this was I didn't have any white paint per se. I had spray paint, so I just took the end of a little cotton swab Q-tip kind of thing and just sprayed the paint directly on it. Like I kind of held the Q-tip point blank to the front of the nozzle of the spray paint and saturated it and just touched just the very end of the cotton swab to make that dot. When I did the back ones, though, I should have reloaded the paint because I had to push down in the swab just a little more to get the paint to come out. So it causes the dots to be a little bit bigger, but that's fine. And if you look at it like that, they work. I mean, it seems like real sights on a gun. And then also I did put that dot in. I did recess it further back than I initially thought I would have. I wanted to kind of stick out to look like it was functional, but with the recessed piece on the other side, it kind of looks like it is functional. The tip came out pretty well. I forgot when I had glued this in, the glue wasn't quite dry. So if you remember, originally I had this rod stuck in the end of the gun, and I used that for support. What I actually ended up doing was I took this rod here and stuck it in here, but the glue wasn't quite dry in the very inside. So just now, before I started doing this particular segment, when I went to pop it out, it got stuck pretty good, and I was kind of cursing myself, going, oh crap, no, no, no. But it's fine. Yeah, it looks good. I can't really show you my brother's gun, unfortunately, because he couldn't come today. And unfortunately, talking to him, the event that he's trying to go to next weekend, he might not be able to go to now. So this was not a effort for no reason. I mean, he's still going to use the costume piece for another event, I'm sure. But he couldn't get the two costumes together that he was doing in time, due to budget constraints, I guess. So unfortunately, you know, he didn't finish his. I did, however, see some sneak peeks of it. There are he sent me a text message, I should say, with some pictures, and if I can get the pictures out of my phone, uploaded to my computer, and then edited into this video, I'll try to do so, just to show what, you know, what he started doing. I can give you a hint. He used a lot more of this thinner foam on some of the other pieces of the gun, but it looked pretty good from what I saw, and I'll have to see if I could try to do that in this particular video. Well, with that, I don't really have anything more to put into this particular vid, and this is probably going to wrap it up for this series for now, until I can get a hold of his particular build and we can show a screenshot side by side as to what they look like and compare the two. So that might not be, you know, coming up as soon as I'd like it to be. That might be another video for a longer time. But with that, you know, thank you again for watching this particular series. This is, you know, a little different than what I normally do in this channel, obviously, being that it is a tech channel, but we still do a lot of custom stuff. We build things, so it's not too far off. You know, it's actually funny. Here it is. It's this lazy Sunday night here, and it's kind of raining outside, so I have nothing really else better to do all day long. But I couldn't come out here because it was pouring so bad. I didn't want to bring my equipment out and have it get wet. But it just slowed down just enough, and I figured I would do the last couple bits of these videos. And unfortunately, like I said, Nick couldn't come around today to compare it. I do, however, still have the same cutout from what we originally did. And we can see it came out pretty good. I mean, it's not perfect. Some of the stuff still lines up. Some of the stuff not so much. If I get a better foam cutter, I will do another one of these in the future. In fact, I came up with an idea to how to put a little tactile switch right behind this trigger and hook it up with a battery system and everything, so we can actually fake fire the gun. You can actually point at somebody, pull the little trigger back just a little bit just to engage the button, and it would make the tip of the gun light up red. So that way it would simulate that you're firing. So if you want to use it for actual cosplay usage, you could do that technically. And I might just do that. It was fun to build this. I hope you guys had fun watching it. We'll see you next video.